Jeffrey's trying to lose weight. So what does he do? He says he's going to have a smoothie every morning to help him lose weight. So Jeffrey takes a banana, a mango, some apple. He puts a little bit of milk in there. He blends it all up and he has that every day. He's like, I'm going to be healthy. I'm having fruit. A couple of months go by and Adonis has actually picked up more belly fat. What? He's been doing this consistently for 6 months, every day, having this breakfast shake. A couple of years down the line, he's even fatter. Adonis. Adonis doesn't blend his foods or anything. Adonis eats things as they come out of the ground naturally. He'll have an apple and then he'll have a banana. But he never blends his foods. He knows a certain secret that you don't, and I'm going to share it with you today. We have this restaurant in where I live called Kauai. And basically, this is like a health shop. And fair enough, some of the foods that they serve, it's not deep fried in oil. It's grilled chicken, it's grilled steak. It's fairly healthy compared to the modern diet of everything being fried. Their smoothies, though, a lot of their smoothies are health smoothies. And these so-called health smoothies are essentially a lot of fruit blended up with some water. That's mainly it. Just some fruit, some water, that's it. Now, you might be thinking, what's so bad about fruit? Fruit is good for you, I used to think the same. Fruit, what's wrong with fruit? We're supposed to eat fruit. I'm just having it in a different form. What's so bad about that? So I used to have these smoothies and think, okay, I'm doing something good. And then, I started to pick up more weight and I was like, well, something ain't right here. Why is this happening? So the thing is, with the fruits and blending them up, there is a very, very critical problem with that. So I'm going to break down sugar, different types of sugar, and the effects sugar have, right? So the three types of sugars you have. You have glucose, you have fructose, and you have sucrose. So glucose and fructose are different, but sucrose is actually fructose and glucose. It's half and half, right? So when you see something that says 100 grams of sucrose, it's actually 5 grams of glucose, 5 grams of fructose, right? Just to differentiate. So sucrose we're not really going to focus on because it's essentially glucose and fructose. So let's break down fructose. Let's break down glucose. Glucose is something that that is vital for you. It's something that's incredibly important for you and the function of your human body. The mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, they all require glucose to function. Glucose is energy. Every living cell on the earth needs it, even you. If you don't get enough glucose, your body will produce glucose. That's how important it is. It will literally produce it so that you have it. So we know that we need glucose because glucose gives us energy, right? We need it for our cells. So what happens where do we get glucose from? Glucose comes in many forms. Glucose comes from fruits, certain complex carbs and simple carbs, but you don't get much of it from protein or vegetables, or you do get some of it from dairy. You get a type of sugar from dairy, but that's generally processed. So you need glucose to survive. It's imperative that you have to have glucose, otherwise your mitochondria are going to struggle. You'll struggle for energy. So let's discuss the relationship that glucose has with your other hormones. So glucose has a relationship with something called, we're specifically going to focus on two. It's called leptin and insulin. So what is the relationship between glucose and insulin? Now, if any of you are diabetic or know of anyone diabetic, you might grasp this a lot easier. I'll try to explain it as clearly as I can. When you have glucose, when glucose is essentially like sugar, right? So when you ingest glucose, your blood sugar increases because there's now more sugar in your body. So your body metabolizes it, meaning it absorbs it, and now there's more sugar in your bloodstream. Now, what your body does is it regulates that by increasing insulin. Insulin helps regulate your sugar levels, right? If someone is on a sugar high, you give them insulin and it'll decrease their sugar. So if someone's on a sugar low, you don't give them insulin. So we know that if you have a lot of glucose, your insulin will spike, right? And if your glucose is low, then your insulin is it regulates that it's probably low. So because it doesn't want you to it doesn't want to regulate it. It doesn't want it to go up because then they'll suppress your glucose. So leptin. Now the relationship that leptin has with insulin is the only one we're going to pay attention to. So when your insulin spikes, they found out that it blocks a hormone called leptin. Leptin is responsible for telling your brain when it's full. So when you're eating food, leptin will say, okay, once it's reached a certain amount, I'm full now, stop eating. And that's when you'll get the signal to stop eating. The problem is, however, when your insulin spikes, it actually blocks your brain from seeing your leptin receptors. So what does that mean? What that means is this. When you have sugar, your glucose spikes. When your glucose spikes, your insulin spikes. Because your insulin is spiked and you're eating, you may be full, meaning you may have enough energy, you may have enough fat and energy, so where your leptin is like, okay, we have enough, stop eating. It sends the signal, but because your insulin is spiked because of all the sugar you're eating, because your glucose is up, your brain can't see that, and so you overeat. So it becomes a cycle of you eat sugar, your body thinks it's starving, so you eat more, and then you overeat. That's why it's so easy to overeat when you have sugary stuff. That's why it's difficult to overeat when you do a clean diet, because clean diets don't have a lot of sugar. But when you do dirty bulk, you get a dirty bulk and you get a clean bulk. It's very hard to overeat on a clean bulk because there's very little sugar, there's very little processing done, so it's mainly just raw food, and that's very filling. But when you have processed food, they add calories and calories, like fried chips. You're looking at 500-600 calories. That's almost a whole meal of a healthy diet. So we know that glucose, when you have glucose, you basically become more hungry and you overeat. So let's look at fructose. Fructose is something that your body doesn't need and it doesn't create. Fructose generally comes from fruits and fruits, not vegetables, fruits. The thing about fructose, and this is the important part, is that what happens to glucose and what happens to fructose are two slightly separate things. In your body, your muscles need something called glycogen. Glycogen, like I said, is the way your body stores glucose for when your mitochondria and your cells need it, because it needs it to survive. So it stores it for when you need it. So when you have glucose, about 20% of it makes it to your liver. 80% of it gets absorbed by your body because, like I said, your whole body needs it. So when you have, let's say you have 100 calories of glucose. 80% of it your body metabolizes, and 20% of it goes to your liver. Your liver then uses it and then stores it as glycogen. The excess is glycogen, which it can then recall back when it needs. Fructose, 100% of it goes to your liver. Your body can't do anything else with it. Your liver can metabolize fructose because none of your other body parts can use it. So you have 100 calories of fructose, it goes straight to your liver. Nothing else can do with it. Now fructose cannot be turned into glycogen because it's not glucose. And there's a different structure as the way fructose works. There's a different structure. Chemically a different structure. So basically it gets stored as fat. It gets broken down and stored as fat, essentially. It goes through a long process, it becomes citrate, and then it gets stored as fat, and then it creates something called junk one as well in your liver, which is like a whole bunch of other stuff. And then there's other stuff that it creates that is bad for you, but we're not going to go into that right now. But long story short, it creates fat. Now, sometimes what happens is there's a little bit of this fat that gets left in your liver. It can't escape the liver. And so over the years, when you have a lot of fructose, what happens is you'll get people who develop something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the thing is that generally is prevalent in alcoholics, but that's why there's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Because the thing about alcohol is about 80% of it is metabolized through the liver. And since it's not glucose, it cannot be processed as glycogen. So it goes through the same process fructose goes through, and there's a little bit of fat that gets left behind each time. And that's why they call it. Same process. So you can also develop a fatty liver from drinking too much and from having too much fructose. So what am I saying? Am I saying fruits are bad because fruits mainly have fructose? No, fruits aren't bad. There's there's one main thing that separates a smoothie and fruit and how it will affect your liver, and it's called fiber. When you have a fruit, when you eat a fruit, the fruit you eat has fiber. Fiber is something that comes in that comes with the fruit, and what that does is that allows your body to it slows down the fructose from entering your bloodstream and your liver. So it acts as almost like a fishing net. Like it catches all the fructose, all that because what would happen is when you blend up your fruit, you destroy the fiber. The fiber is like a net. It's like a physical net. When you blend it up, that net is destroyed. So when you drink that fruit and you drink let's say to get a glass of apple juice, you have to essentially use 3 apples, right? For this example's sake. You have 3 apples worth of sugar in about 15 seconds. And now only your liver can process that, nothing else can. So your liver gets the tsunami of fructose that it doesn't know that it has to process now. And like I said, some of it gets left as fat and most of it gets stored as fat, right? Whereas to eat 3 apples, it's a lot of food. Like 3 apples to eat in one sitting is not something that I can do. Well, I can do it, but I wouldn't enjoy it very much. Maybe 1 or so. So when you eat 3 apples, well, you can only eat 1. So there's the limiting factor of how much you can actually eat. And secondly, the fiber in there acts as a net to stop the fructose from overwhelming your liver, preventing you from, and if you use the energy, then it's okay. So this is the problem with blending up fruit. Yeah. One is that you consume more fruit than you normally could, because you can blend an apple, a banana, a mango, some pineapple, and have it all in one go. You can't do that normally. You can't go and have this much apple, this much banana, this much. There's too much fiber, and it's very filling. And the second thing is it destroys the fiber. So this is it. Try not to blend up your fruits, because like I said, you destroy the fiber and your body cannot process fructose very well. And so what will end up happening is your body will end up being overwhelmed, and your liver can take a lot. Generally speaking, they say that your liver can handle quite a beating, but you don't really want to push the limits. The other thing you need to look out for is something called high fructose corn syrup. So fructose corn syrup is something that in America they feed their cows corn, right? And so if you look at the fat, if you look at the meat, so yeah, try not to blend up your fruit, and if you can, eat it whole, and avoid sugars as much as possible, because it's really not good for you. One thing that will help with the problem of having too much glucose or fructose is working out. When you work out, you deplete your glycogen storages in your muscles, and so they need to be replenished. And so when you have fruit and stuff, it's okay. So as a pre-workout or a post-workout, fruit is okay. But aside from that, well, there's other times you can have fruit, but those are the best times I find for me.